The word failure did not land all at once. It never does. It arrived in fragments, first as a vibration in the air, barely shaped, like something unfinished that could still be taken back if either of us chose to pretend it hadn't been said. Then it settled, syllable by syllable, into something solid enough to press against my ribs from the inside. "You are a loser," my father didn't raise his voice. That was the first thing I noticed, before anything else. Not the meaning, not the weight, just the tone. Flat, controlled, almost bored. As if he had finally reached a conclusion he had been quietly verifying for years, and this moment, this sentence, was simply the formal announcement. The ceiling fan above us rotated with a low mechanical hum, its blades slicing the thick afternoon air into slow, uneven layers. I could feel each rotation, not as wind, but as a faint pressure shifting against my skin, like the room itself was breathing around me. I didn't respond, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because everything I could say felt misplaced, too loud for the silence he had chosen, too weak for the certainty in his voice. My throat tightened anyway, a reflex, my body reacting before my mind had finished processing. I swallowed. It didn't help. He was still looking at me. Not directly, not in the way people look when they're trying to understand you, but with that angled gaze, slightly off-center, like I was something he had already measured and categorized. His eyes moved across my face, paused briefly, then moved away again, not lingering long enough to invite any kind of connection. I became aware of my hands. They were resting on my thighs, fingers slightly curled, nails pressing faint crescents into the fabric of my jeans. I hadn't noticed when I had done that. The pressure felt intentional, but I couldn't remember deciding to do it. I loosened my grip, then tightened it again, because letting go felt exposed. "You're almost 30, he continued, still calm, still measured. "And what do you have?" The question didn't feel like a question. It felt like a structure, something already built, waiting for me to walk into it. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because the moment stretched. And in that stretch, something started to shift inside my head. Not a thought, not a sentence, more like a rearrangement. Pieces moving, quietly, deliberately. "I'm working," I said finally. My voice sounded smaller than I expected. Not weak, just contained, like it had been compressed before it came out. He exhaled through his nose, a short, controlled breath. Not quite a sigh, not quite dismissal. Something in between. "Working," he repeated as if testing the word. "That's what you call it." The fan continued to turn. One rotation, two, three, each one marking time in a way that felt disproportionate to the actual seconds passed. "I make enough," I added, too quickly this time. I heard it the moment it left my mouth, the defensiveness, the need to justify. It sat between us, raw and unprotected. He leaned back slightly in his chair. The wood creaked under his weight, a slow, deliberate sound that seemed to echo longer than it should have. Enough for what? There it was again. Not a question, a narrowing, a tightening of space. My chest expanded as I inhaled, but the air felt thick, like it had weight. It didn't fill me the way it should have. It just pressed outward against something that wasn't moving. "For myself," I said, a pause. Then quieter for now, he nodded. Once, slowly, as if that confirmed something. I watched the movement of his head, the slight tightening at the corners of his mouth, the almost imperceptible shift in his posture as he settled deeper into his chair. Everything about him felt controlled, measured, like nothing he did was accidental. "You always say 'for now,'" he said. "But now has been going on for a long time." The words didn't hit me immediately. They circled, hovered, then sank. I felt it in my stomach first, a dull, heavy drop that spread outward in slow wave. My fingers pressed harder into my thighs again, the fabric folding under the pressure. I wanted to argue. I could feel the arguments forming, fragmented, overlapping, each one trying to push forward to take shape. "You don't understand. Things are different now. I'm building something." But each one dissolved before it reached my mouth. Because beneath them, quieter but heavier, was another thought. One that didn't argue. Just observe. What if he's right? I shifted slightly in my seat. The movement felt too loud, too visible, as if even the smallest adjustment could be interpreted, analyzed, turned into something else. "I'm not where I was before," I said instead. Careful, neutral. trying to find a position that didn't expose too much. He tilted his head. Just a fraction. But you're not where you should be either. There was no emphasis, no aggression. Just one placement. Like he was setting a piece down on a board. And suddenly I became aware of the space between us, the distance. Not just physical, but something else. Something harder to define. A gap that had been there for years, maybe longer, but that now felt one sharper, more defined, as if the edges had been outlined. You compare yourself to people below you, he continued. That's why you feel comfortable. My jaw tightened. I didn't mean for it to, it just what happened automatically. A reaction I couldn't fully suppress. I don't, you do, he cut in. Still calm, still controlled, but firmer, not louder, just what? More certain. The interruption landed heavier than the words themselves, because it removed something. The space to respond, the illusion of dialogue. I felt something shift again inside my chest. Not a sharp pain, not even a clear emotion. Just what? Pressure, building, slowly. You think survival is success, he said. It's not, silence followed. But it wasn't empty. It pressed in, from all sides. I became hyper-aware of everything, the faint ticking sound from the clock in the hallway, the distant noise of a motorbike passing outside, the slight vibration of my phone in my pocket as a notification came through. Each sound felt amplified, intrusive, like it didn't belong but couldn't be ignored. I didn't check my phone. I didn't move, because moving felt like, what? Admitting something. Instead, I stared at the edge of the table between us. A small scratch ran along the surface, thin and irregular. I followed it with my eyes, tracing its path as it curved slightly, then disappeared under the shadow of a glass. It felt easier to focus on that, on something small, contained, predictable. You're quiet, he said. I looked up. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. Then I looked away. Because there's nothing to say, I replied. That wasn't true, but it felt, what? Safer. He studied me for a moment, long enough that I became aware of the tension in my shoulders, the way my back was slightly hunched, the way my breathing had become shallow without me noticing. You don't defend yourself, he said. It wasn't criticism. Not directly. More like, what? Observation. I let out a slow breath, felt it catch halfway, forced it the rest of the way out. What's the point? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. The pause stretched, expanded, filled the room. Then quietly, there is no point, something inside me tightened. Sharply this time. Quick, almost imperceptible contraction that left a hollow space behind it. Exactly, he added. The words settled like dust, soft, but suffocating. I felt it then. Not all at once, but enough to recognize the shape of it. This wasn't a conversation. It wasn't even an argument. It was, what? Something else. A slow construction, piece by piece, and I was already inside it. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against my phone. Smooth, familiar, grounding. I pulled it out slowly, not because I had decided to, but because my body needed something to do, something to hold, to anchor itself to. He watched the movement. I could feel it, even without looking up. Checking messages, he asked. I shook my head. No, my thumb hovered over the screen. The display lit up. Notifications stacked along the top. Emails, messages, numbers. All of it blurred together for a moment before my focus narrowed. Not on the notifications, not on anything external, but on something else, a thought, clearer now, more defined. I opened the banking app. The loading screen appeared. A simple animation, a circle turning, over and over, like the fan above us, like time, like everything in this room that seemed to move without actually going anywhere. Still nothing to say, he asked. I didn't answer. The app loaded. Numbers filled the screen. Clean, organized, undeniable. I stared at them, not with pride, not even with relief. Just, what? Awareness. Quiet acknowledgement of something that existed whether he believed in it or not. My thumb hesitated, just for a second, because this was a shift, not in the conversation, but in me. a decision forming. Slowly, deliberately, I placed the phone on the table. Between us, screen facing him. He glanced down, briefly, then back at me. "What is this?" he asked. I leaned back slightly in my chair, mirroring him, not consciously. "Just what's happening?" "My account," I said. "Simple, neutral." He didn't look at it immediately. His gaze stayed on my face, searching, measuring, as if the phone wasn't the point, as if this moment was. Then slowly he shifted his eyes downward. The room seemed to quiet, even the fan, even the distant noise outside. Everything narrowed to that single movement. His eyes scanning the screen, pausing, adjusting, writing. I watched him, not the phone, not the numbers, him. The slight change in his expression, subtle, almost invisible, but there, a fraction of a second where something shifted, not shock, not even surprise, something smaller, more controlled, but real. He blinked once, then again, his jaw tight, just slightly, then relaxed. He looked back up at me. The silence that followed felt different, not lighter, not easier, just altered. "You think this changes anything?" he asked. And there it was, the next layer, the deeper pressure. Because for a moment, just a moment, I had expected something else. Recognition, adjustment. But instead this. I felt the hollow space in my chest expand, widen, swallowing the brief flicker of something I hadn't even fully acknowledged. "No," I said. And this time my voice didn't feel small. It felt steady, not strong, but anchored. "I don't think it changes anything." I leaned forward slightly, my elbows resting on my knees, my hands loosely clasped, the phone still between us. "But I wanted you to see it." He didn't respond. He just looked at me. And in that look I could feel it again, the pressure, the analysis, the quiet, relentless measuring. Something inside me had already shifted, not resolved, not healed, just moved slightly, enough to change the angle of everything. "I'm still a failure, right?" I asked. The question hung there, not as a challenge, not even as a demand, just present. He held my gaze, longer this time, no deflection, no avoidance. And for a second, a brief, fragile second, I thought I saw it. Not doubt, not uncertainty, but something close, something that didn't fit as neatly into the structure he had built. Then it was gone, replaced, smoothed over, controlled. "You're still my son," he said, and somehow that felt heavier than anything else he had said. "You're still my son," he said. The sentence did not resolve anything. It didn't soften the air, didn't open space, didn't offer anything resembling warmth. It simply replaced something, like a word laid over another word, without removing what was underneath. I could still hear failure beneath it, faint but persistent, like a second voice speaking just slightly out of sync. For a moment, neither of us moved. The phone remained on the table between us, its light dimming slightly as the screen prepared to sleep. The numbers were still visible, but less sharp now, like they were receding, withdrawing into something less certain. My eyes flickered down to it, then back to him, because suddenly the phone didn't feel like proof anymore. It felt exposed, like I had placed something internal, something private, into a space where it could be reinterpreted, redefined, taken apart in ways I couldn't control. "You didn't answer," I said. My voice came out quieter than before, but not hesitant. "Just narrower, focused." His gaze shifted, not away, but through me, as if he was aligning something in his head before speaking. "I did," he replied, a pause. "You just didn't like the answer." Something tightened again inside my chest, but this time it wasn't sharp. It was dull, spreading, like a slow bruise forming under the surface. I inhaled. The air felt colder now. Or maybe I was just more aware of it. "That's not an answer," I said. He tilted his head slightly, studying me, not aggressively, not even critically, but with that same quiet dissection he had been using the entire time. "You want me to say you're successful?" he asked. The question sat there, heavy, loaded. I could feel the shape of it, how it curved, how it narrowed the space of possible responses until only a few remained, each one carrying its own weight, its own consequences. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because anything I said would confirm something. Not necessarily what I wanted, but something. I want you to be honest, I said finally. And even as I said it, I felt the instability in the sentence. The way it langed too much on something undefined. Honest. What did that even mean here? His version. Mine. Something in between that didn't actually exist. He leaned forward slightly. Not enough to close the distance, but enough to change the angle. I am honest, he said. And there was no hesitation, no self-doubt. Just certainty. Which made it worse. Because it meant this entire structure, this pressure, this quiet dismantling was not accidental. It was intentional, a method, a way of seeing, a way of defining. You confuse progress with direction, he continued. You're moving, yes. But where? The question lingered. Longer this time. Not because he paused, but because something inside me did. A hesitation that wasn't about words, but about alignment. Because for a split second, I didn't know how to answer. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wasn't sure which answer was mine anymore. I know where I'm going, I said. The sentence came out automatically, reflexive. But as soon as it existed in the space between us, I felt something underneath it, something less stable, less certain, pressing upward. He didn't challenge it immediately. He just watched me. And in that silence, the sentence started to shift. Internally, quietly. Do I? The thought appeared without invitation. Sharp, precise. I tried to push it away, but it stayed. Not loud, not overwhelming. Just present, waiting. You think you know, he said. And it felt like he had heard the thought. Not literally, but close enough that the distinction didn't matter. My fingers twitched slightly against each other, the subtle friction of skin against skin grounding and irritating at the same time. I became aware of the exact pressure of my thumb pressing into the side of my index finger, the faint moisture where they met, the small, repetitive movement I hadn't realized I was making. I stopped, then started again, because stopping felt too deliberate, too noticeable. Why does it matter to you? I asked. The question came out sharper than I intended, not loud, but edged. And for the first time, something in his expression shifted in a way that wasn't entirely controlled. Not a crack, not even close, but a recalibration, subtle, quick. Because you're still here, he said. The words landed strangely, not accusatory, not even critical, just factual, and somehow that made them heavier. I glanced around the room, the walls, the old wooden cabinet in the corner, the clock in the hallway, its ticking now louder, more insistent. Familiarity of it all pressed in on me, not as comfort, but as containment. You told me to come, I said. A simple statement, but it felt like stepping onto unstable ground. He nodded. I did, silent. Then and you came, the addition was small. But it shifted everything. Because now it wasn't just about the invitation. It was about the response. About me. I felt something tighten in my throat again, but this time it didn't close off. It just sat there heavy, like something waiting to be acknowledged. I wanted to see you, I said. It was true. At least part of it. But even as I said it, I felt the incompleteness of the sentence. The missing layer. The things I hadn't included because I couldn't fully articulate them, or didn't want to. He watched me. Long enough that I became aware of my breathing again, slightly uneven, the inhale a fraction shorter than the exhale, like my body was trying to regulate something without my permission. You wanted something, he said. Not a question, a correction. I didn't respond immediately. Because again, he wasn't entirely wrong. And that was the worst part, the accuracy, the precision. It didn't feel like he was guessing. It felt like he was identifying, extracting. I leaned back slightly, the chair creaking under me, the sound stretching into the silence. What do you think I wanted? I asked. On shift. A small one, but deliberate. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the phone again. The screen had dimmed further now, the numbers barely visible unless you focused. Then he looked back at me. Validation, he said. The words settled. Not violently, not abruptly, but with a kind of quiet finality. I felt it move through me, slow, deliberate, touching parts of me I hadn't fully examined, hadn't wanted to. And the worst part was I couldn't immediately reject it. Because somewhere, buried under layers of justification and logic and self-definition, there was a part of me that recognized, not fully, not comfortably, but enough. I didn't show you that for validation, I said. And as soon as I said it, I felt the tension in the sentence, the way it leaned too hard in one direction, like it was compensating for something. He didn't argue. He didn't even respond right away. He just watched. And in that watching, the sentence started to unravel. Internally, quietly. Then why did you show it? The question wasn't his. Not this time. It was mine. And it didn't feel rhetorical. It felt invasive, persistent. Because I couldn't answer it cleanly. Not without touching something I wasn't ready to examine. My gaze dropped to the phone again. The screen went black. Just like that. One moment visible. The next, nothing. A reflection replaced the numbers. Faint, distorted. I could see part of my face in it. Blurry. Unclear. You see, he said softly. I looked up. What? He gestured slightly toward the phone. You showed me something that disappears the moment it's not being looked at. The words slid into place. Effortlessly. Too effortlessly. That's not how it works, I said quickly. Too quickly. Because the moment I said it, I realized I wasn't entirely responding to what he had said. I was responding to something underneath it. Something implied. Something I hadn't fully formed yet. He didn't push. He didn't need to. The space he left was enough. I picked up the phone. The movement felt heavier than it should have, as if the object itself had gained weight. I tapped the screen. It lit up again. The numbers returned. Clear. Defined. Stable. I can show you again, I said. My voice was steady, but there was something else in it now. Something tighter. More deliberate. He didn't look. Not immediately. You can show it as many times as you want, he said. That doesn't make it mean what you want it to mean. The sentence didn't hit me all at once. It moved through me in layers. First the surface, simple disagreement. Then deeper, something else. Something more invasive. Because suddenly it wasn't about the numbers. It wasn't about the proof. It was about interpretation, control, definition. Who gets to decide what something means? My grip on the phone tightened slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that I felt it. The subtle increase in pressure. The way my fingers adjusted around the edges, holding it more firmly than necessary. And who decides that? I asked. The question came out quieter than I expected, but sharper, more focused. He held my gaze. Long, unbroken. Then reality does. The word reality hung in the air. Heavy, unyielding. And for a moment, everything inside me stalled, not stopped, just paused. Because something about the way he said it, so certain, so fixed, made it feel less like a concept and more like a verdict. I looked down at the phone again, at the numbers, at the clean, structured certainty of them, then back at him, at the way he sat, the way he held himself, the way he spoke as if everything had already been measured, defined, placed. And something inside me shifted, not dramatically, not violently, but enough to create a small, quiet distance between what he was saying and what I was feeling. You keep talking about reality, I said slowly. But it sounds like you're just talking about your version of it. The moment the words left my mouth, I felt it, the change. Subtle, but real in him. In the room, in me. Not an explosion. Not even conflict. Just a shift in pressure, a recalibration. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, but in focus. You think reality is subjective? He asked. I shook my head. No, a pause. Then I think you are, silent. Thicker this time. Denser. Like the air itself had compressed. The fan above us continued to turn. Slow. Unchanging. But now it felt distant. Like it belonged to a different layer of the room. He didn't respond immediately. And that, more than anything, made something inside me tight. Because up until now, he had always had something to say. Always had a response, a counter, a correction. But this pause felt different. longer, more deliberate, as if he was on choosing something carefully. You've changed, he said finally. The sentence was simple, but it carried something underneath it, something I couldn't immediately define. I felt my chest expand as I inhaled. The air caught slightly, then moved, slowly. I've grown, I said. He shook his head. Once. No, the word was soft, but absolute. You've learned how to defend yourself better. The distinction landed harder than I expected, because it reframed everything. Not growth, not progress, just one adaptation, reaction, a response to pressure rather than a movement forward. I felt something inside me resist that, instinctively. But at the same time, another part of me hesitated, because I couldn't fully dismiss it. Not completely. In that hesitation, that small, quiet fracture was enough. Enough for the pressure to slip back in. Subtle, persistent, unrelenting. I looked at him, really looked this time, at the lines on his face, the way his eyes held steady, the way his posture never fully relaxed. And for the first time, a different thought surfaced. Not about me, about him. Has he always been like this? The question didn't come with an answer. Just one present, lingering, uncomfortable. Because if the answer was yes, then what did that mean for everything else? And if the answer was no, then when did it change? And why? The questions didn't resolve. They didn't need to, they just stayed, adding another layer, another weight, another point of tension in a space that was already too full. I exhaled slowly, felt the air leave my lungs in a controlled, deliberate way. Then I'm not here to prove anything to you, I said. The sentence felt different, not defensive, not reactive, just one place, carefully. He watched me, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw it again. That same flicker, that same almost imperceptible shift. Then you already are, he said. And just like that, the space closed again.